All right, and we're live.
Hello.
Hi. All right. Welcome to the Savage Bloggers Network Hangouts on Air. I'm Christian Serrano, and with me tonight is Shawn Gaston, the creator of the Clockworks webcomic. He's also the illustrator for Streets of Bedlam. If you haven't checked out that setting, we'll talk about that more later on, and get into that. Kind of want to go into some history with Shawn and where how I became familiar with him and how I've started following his work. And probably about 2006 or 2007, I think, Shawn, correct me if I'm wrong on that date, but you were doing Chainmail Bikini as a collaborative project with Seamus Young
Yep,
of DM of the Ring. And Chainmail Bikini at the time was hosted on the Fear the Boot podcast website. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Awesome. And how long did that series run for, Chainmail Bikini?
We did that for about a year, I want to say. About 50 comics before I got horribly burned out on it. And this was sadly before Patreon and Kickstarter and all of that, so we were making basically no money. And I was, spending 6 hours a page drawing it, and it got, kind of old. Um, but it was a fun process to make until, it stopped being fun and I had to, work real jobs.
Right. And what about it in particular became unfun for you?
It's I mean, drawing a comic is a lot of work.
Hmm.
Especially if you're doing all of the artwork yourself. And so if you're going to be drawing a comic, it really has to be your baby. I've found, or you're getting paid, real money for it. Or both would be ideal. But we're like, Chainmail Bikini, I was brought on as an artist after they'd already come up with the idea. And it was a very collaborative process once we were writing it. But it was something that I was doing because it seemed like it was fun and not necessarily because I had a burning desire to tell that particular story, which is a big difference between Clockworks and that.
Right. Okay. And so at some point in time, you wrapped up Chainmail Bikini. It was probably, I think, what, around 2007, I think, or so?
2008 was, I think, when it
2008.
ended. Yeah.
Okay. And so when you're wrapping up Chainmail Bikini, one of the things that, if you look back at the last strip, I think it is, which is kind of cool, you actually have a nod and a reference to Clockworks. And I think even in there, in the I don't know if it's in the Where Are They Now or in the actual, blog post itself for that strip, you talk about, moving over to Clockworks and doing work on that.
Yeah. By the time we did the last strip, I'd actually already started Clockworks.
Oh, okay.
Because unfortunately the comic ended, in, burnout and, not a proper finish. So when we changed hosting off of Fear the Boot, I put it up on my site and we reposted all the old comics. Seamus and I went back in 2010, I think it was, and wrote a proper final comic for it. Because they were fun characters. We wanted to give them a real send-off, And so by then I was already making Clockworks, and I threw in a little Clockworks joke just because it made me happy.
Yeah, I remember the characters in Chainmail Bikini were absolutely hilarious, and I think just about every GM or every player could relate to at least one or more of those
Oh, yeah, yeah.
characters. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Or we have some of those characters in our RPG groups. So
Even if you don't want them.
yeah, even if you don't want them, you love them, but they're there, and and yeah, all warts and all, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, have you done anything before Chainmail Bikini, and how did you sort of get started in illustration? What was your background with that?
I just never really stopped drawing from when I was a kid. Much like how I never really stopped playing role-playing games. Um, but yeah, I've been drawing everything since I was a kid, and I started doing webcomics. My first one was 2002 or something. It was this little tiny comic called Doors and Windows that was kind of a film noir horror story that like 5 people read, and those 5 people really liked it, but nobody else really knew it existed.
Oh, actually, yeah, I think I remember that one. It was,
It's a black and white. There's like a detective
yeah,
chain smoking, and there's demons and spooky stuff, and
that's right, that's right. I think I do
yeah.
remember that. Yeah.
So when DM of the Rings was wrapping up, the Fear the Boot guys, I was friends with them. And actually, Luke from Fear the Boot introduced me to Savage Worlds, which brings us all around here. Um, and so they had offered Seamus to do a follow-up comic, and instead of doing screenshots, they were going to team him up with an artist and Luke offered me the spot, and so that's how Chainmail Bikini happened.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. And was Chainmail Bikini, was that based on an actual like group and interactions among those group, or was that just something you guys came up with on the top
The
of your
joke
head?
is that it's the same party from DM of the Rings
Oh,
with a
that's
couple
right.
with a couple of new players thrown in, and I don't remember who exactly is who because it's been a few years. But yeah, so that was the idea there. Was that it was
Nice.
just those guys, and I think they kind of morphed a bit. Like they became a bit cartoonier in Chainmail Bikini than they are in DM of the Rings, and not just because you saw them as cartoons.
Right.
Their
Right.
personalities, I think, became a bit more less realistic and
Right.
sillier. But yeah, they were originally the same basic characters.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. I think there was actually a segue
Yeah,
between
because
the two.
we had Aragon show up again.
Right. Right.
Yes.
Very cool. Very cool. So with Clockworks, what? How was that conceived? Was that a setting first? Was it a comic first? What was the origins of that for you?
That was a tabletop role playing campaign. That was a Savage Worlds game, which is why it's I've originally had stats for all the characters up on the site, and it's been connected to the Savage Worlds community ever since. But Clockworks was actually the third campaign that I had run or played in that general setting. And what just happened was we had made characters, and I loved them so much. I was like, oh, these guys are great. These are so much fun. And I posted a thing, and I was like, I actually posted do you remember like how they used to do those they fight crime jokes?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
back in, like, you remember that meme? But I was like, she's a, grim detective missing for her parents. He's a, foreigner monster hunter. He's a giant troll who builds machines. They fight crime.
And together they fight crime. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, these guys are great. And I was like, I would totally watch a show based on these characters. And my friend Ken, who played Thornton in the original game, was like, or maybe read a webcomic. And
Nice.
that really just got the idea, stuck in my head. And so I couldn't, I've been doing it ever since.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so for a while, the campaign has now been wrapped up for several years. It lasted, I don't know, about a year and a half or so. And the comic's been going on for like 5 or 6, slowly. But for a while, they were going on at the same time. And but now, it just continues on in the comic form.
Now, at some point, you were actually, and I don't know if you're still doing this, you were actually drawing the stories based on the events in the campaign.
Yes, that's still, it's kind of morphed a bit, but still I have the outline. It's still the basic outline of what happened in that campaign. And that's going to be the case for, the rest of it. So eventually one day Clockworks will end. It will
Oh,
probably be a long time from now.
yeah, because I remember in one post a couple years ago, you had mentioned that you had so much material left to cover and so much ground to cover from the campaign that you were like you'd be drawing for a while.
Yeah, I keep expanding how long I expect it to take, but at my current rate of doing 1 page a week, which is about what we've been keeping up for the last year or so, I've probably got another 15 years before I finish Clockworks.
Holy cow! And you're gonna keep it going for 15 years?
I plan on it. Yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yes. That
Very
is,
cool.
I now have every intention of keeping that going as long as, because I mean, at this point, I'm almost 200 pages in. I might as well go all the way.
Cool. Oh, and I should explain, by the way, Sean doesn't have a camera on his on the
Oh,
computer
yeah.
that he's on. So what he's showing is actually a screen share of the work that he does via Photoshop,
Yep.
and we'll kind of look at some of that later on. Go ahead
That's
and
right.
switch to his camera there. So yeah, so there's
It's just a random page that I thought, looked pretty good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide you wanted to become? So you had announced an official an official licensee of Savage Worlds,
Yes.
Clarencia Press, and that was in 2012, correct?
Yeah. I can't believe that's been 3 years. Oops.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, didn't mean for it to be an oops. No,
No,
not
it's
at all.
okay.
So you are still working on the manuscript for Clockworks as an official setting, or are you kind
Yes.
of leaning more toward fan setting?
Um,
Which way are you going with it?
We're still officially a licensee, which is cool. So Yeah, what's going to happen next? Because it turns out it's actually a lot of work to write an RPG setting,
Yeah.
especially if you're drawing a comic at the same time and have a real job and all of that sort of thing. Um, and so it's taken much longer than I really expected it to. But that was part of my thought process. Was I knew that it would take a long time, so I wanted to make sure to wait until the manuscript was completely done before I launched any sort of Kickstarter. Because my worst nightmare would be that, like, if people had given me money in 2012 and I was still writing it right now, I would feel just horrible. So I wanted to make sure that everything was done, as close to being done before I was like, hey, buy this thing. So eventually, yes, I'd still like to do the full setting. What's going to happen first is the next thing on my agenda is the Clockworks Volume 1 ebook, which will collect almost all of the story to date. The first 16 chapters or 190 pages. And there's going to be a quick start Savage Worlds appendix at the end of that. That'll be like 20 or 30 pages. That'll be just enough to kind of, get started if people want to.
Nice. Very nice. And are you going to stat up like the characters from the stories and stuff like that?
Yeah. I've still got everybody's stats, so I can just throw those together.
Very cool. Very cool. So, and I'm sorry, what time frame are you thinking about for that volume?
That will be this year. Hopefully this summer, maybe this fall. Just as soon as I can finish. Well, because I've got all the pages are basically done, but I'm going to go back through. I've been going back through and cleaning up a bit of the old art, but without going overboard.
Right.
And a lot of the writing from the manuscript is done. So, yes, as soon as I can, that Volume 1 ebook will be out.
And what channels of distribution are you thinking of going with?
Probably Drive-Thru Comics,
Nice.
maybe Amazon as well, but definitely Drive-Thru Comics / Drive-Thru RPG. If I do the quick start as like a separate freebie, it'll be up on Drive-Thru RPG.
Will that be available as a print on demand as well, or just strictly PDF?
I really have to look at the print on demand kind of price and quality on that. It's possible. The plan is PDF, and anything else is a maybe.
Okay, cool. That's really cool. That's exciting. I didn't realize it was going to be that soon.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I forgot what else I was going to ask about that. Are you thinking about doing is it going to be a Kickstarter thing or just straight up offer it up as a PDF right off the bat?
The ebook will definitely be just for sale.
Okay.
The eventual Savage Worlds full setting book will 100% be a Kickstarter because I want to, hire a real editor and pay other artists to help draw stuff and all of that sort of thing.
Excellent. So speaking of Kickstarters, let's talk a little bit about Streets of Bedlam.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was a really successful Kickstarter program or offering, and it funded. It did really well. Lots of supplements for it. How did you get involved with the being the illustrator for that product?
I had known Jason Blair, who wrote Streets of Bedlam and also did Little Fears, on Twitter, and we've never actually met in person. We've literally never met in person. We now live maybe 4 hours away, but I'd known him on Twitter, and we'd chatted and been friendly. And he announced his new Kickstarter for Streets of Bedlam, Savage Worlds, film noir, dark and gritty setting book, and I was like, oh, this looks great. So I retweeted it because I figured people who like my stuff would like that as well. And sent him a tweet that was like, hey, if you're looking for people to draw that, I know a guy. And he sent me a message that was like, well, do you want to draw the entire book?
Wow.
Yeah, which I was not expecting. I was thinking, oh, yeah, I'll do like a dozen or half dozen illustrations. That'd be really cool. And he's like, no, let's do the whole thing. And so it took me a minute, but I decided, he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So, yes.
Apropos to
Exactly.
the setting.
Exactly. So I drew the whole book, and it was a lot of fun, and it was a lot of work, but it came out really well, and I'm really... Now I have a book on my shelf that, is full of my pictures, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I got to say, I think you did an excellent job of tying that whole book together, cover to from front cover to back cover. And I think you even did at some point during the Kickstarter, you were showing, or he posted sort of iterations of the front cover.
Yeah. We did a whole blog series that was the entire development of that front cover illustration.
Yeah, that was really cool watching that happen. I love the sort of the grit that you put into it. It's a very similar grit that you have with Clockworks. You do a really good job, I think, of with the highlights and the shadows and the playing with dynamic lighting and things like that.
No, thank you very much.
Yeah, and in fact, that illustration you have up right now,
Oh
that's a
yeah,
really good example.
that's just sort of been figuring, and that's part of the setting of Clockworks. Is it's a bit, it's got a bit of a noir vibe to it compared to most steampunk stuff, and it's got a bit of a dystopian, diesel punky cyberpunk vibe compared to a lot of steampunk, and that's just part of the world.
Yeah, you definitely get that sense. You definitely get that sense. I remember the first shot, one of the first drawings you did, where you sort of got the city level. It was like a side cut kind of, or side view
Oh yeah,
of
yeah.
the city, and that was
That big map. Let me see if I
yeah,
have.
that was phenomenal. And that was the first time you really get a sense of the vastness of this multi-layered city.
I know I can bring up the other shot of the city, but
Cool. Yeah.
is that here? I'll do cancel window. It's one of these around here.
Yeah. So when I heard you were doing the artwork for Streets of Bedlam, I was like, that's perfect. I couldn't think of another person that could do it better.
Oh, thank you. I was
Yeah.
really excited with it. Oh,
Yeah.
here we go. Um, this isn't the exact piece you're talking about, but this is the city in Clockworks.
Right. Yeah.
With a nice train in front and our heroes looking out the train, being a little sad.
Yeah, and what's kind of cool is when you're reading the comic, when they were when they were in Clarencia, the city, when you're reading the comic, you get that sense of sort of they're somewhere deep and dark in the
Yeah,
depths
yeah.
of the city. Like there's no sunlight, no matter
Exactly,
what
yeah.
time of day it is, and
And that was very deliberate because I knew eventually they would leave the city, and so kind of like I'm sure you played Final Fantasy VII back in the day. Like the first 12 hours of that, you're in the big city, and then you leave, and all of a sudden, there's trees and hills and light, and I really wanted to capture that sort of idea,
right.
which was interesting because that ended up being like almost 200 pages before we left Clarence City, so it kind of got really oppressive, but I think it works in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, how many pages have you done so far in Clockworks?
The latest page is page 193, not counting the chapter headers.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, because each chapter starts with a new page. So there were 210 altogether, I guess.
Nice. Very
Counting
nice.
those, yeah.
Cool. So yeah, Streets of Bedlam.
Yeah, Streets of Bedlam.
Yeah, and it was phenomenal artwork. I really love the high contrast that you have in your artwork for that book, and I think and you have splashes of red, like typically with blood and things like that.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really cool.
We only got to do that on the cover, I think, because the interior is all black and white. But yeah, the cover has the red.
Right. Yeah. So there were a number of supplements, I think like additional archetypes and
Yep.
Things of that nature. So beyond just the original books, you were able to do illustrations for those supplements as well, correct?
Yeah, that was all part of the original Kickstarter deal.
Right. So are there plans to expand that? Like any of the?
I believe so. I know Jason wants to do a like Streets of Bedlam companion, like a main follow-up sort of player's guide, second book.
Excellent.
And I don't know what his plans are for when that's going to happen, but I know it's on the agenda for someday.
So yeah, some point in the next few years we'll see. That's a really nice detail there.
That was one of the first pictures I ever drew for Streets of Bedlam, was this guy. But yeah.
Tell me about that character. Who is he?
Oh, he is... I forgot his name. It's been a couple years. He is the archetype for the monster. So Savage World, since everybody's a human, or since Streets of Bedlam, since everyone is a human, you don't have the normal Savage Worlds things where you have different races. So instead of having elves or dwarves or whatever, the kind of race mechanical niche is filled in by these different archetypes. Like your detectives and your assassins and so on and so forth. This guy's the monster, who's almost like you could either be Marv from Sin City or you could be Batman. You're just kind of a violent vigilante type who's maybe doing good and maybe not so much.
Right. Or doing good really hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so this guy was the signature monster character, because what we did that was fun in this was each of the main archetypes had a signature character. And then all of the other illustrations in the book are those characters. So I got to then draw them in fun combinations. So you'd have this guy, beating up the gang member and stuff like that.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm flipping through the book right in front of me right now, actually.
Awesome. Awesome. As you should be. Yeah. It's great. It's a great book. Yeah. Should admire. Do you just sit down and just admire your own work every now and then? Just like, oh, that looks so great. I'm so awesome.
I have the opposite effect where anything I did before, the latest couple of things I've done, all I see are the flaws and the things that I would go back and change. So if I look at my old artwork, it's just like, oh man, that's so terrible.
So like
I want to go back and fix that.
Yeah. Typical your own worst critic. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. You wouldn't be an artist otherwise, right?
Right. There's still some parts in Streets of Bedlam that I like. There's some stuff that, every once in a while I'll find an old piece of mine. I'm like, oh, that's not too terrible.
Nice. So was there anything in Streets of Bedlam that, through that experience or through the illustrations that you did from there, that you brought with you back to Clockworks?
Yeah. And I had to kind of unlearn it a little bit, because for a little while I was working on Streets of Bedlam at the same time, there was also a big fight scene going on in Clockworks. And I think Clockworks actually got a lot darker and bloodier than I would have done it otherwise. And I think in hindsight it works out, and it sets the tone for that part of the story, and it's cool. But for a while, Clockworks was like really kind of a bloody, noirish story, not unlike Streets of Bedlam. I think it's because I was working on both of them at the same time. But as far as stuff keeping after that, I don't know. Actually, I do know something. Is one of what was this, chapter 1? I started really kind of exploring the doing like photo collage backgrounds, which is now such an important part of the comic.
Right. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah. And so like this one was the first one that I'm really happy with. So we have, I don't know if you're tabbed over to me yet or not.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we have like the characters walking around in the rain, and the rain itself was all drawn. But that like street, the pawn shop and stuff, was built in Photoshop out of reference photos. And the posters, there's like my friend's band poster, and the show that I used to put on, and stuff like that. I kind of snuck in there.
That's really cool.
A local artist that I really like does these eye decals everywhere, and so I snuck that in there too.
Nice. So
but
you're showing a lot of cool stuff. So I'm going to keep it locked on your screen share here.
Yeah, no problem.
That's really good stuff there.
So this was the chapter 1 in Streets of Bedlam, and that was really one of my first experiments trying to building these weird photo collages and mixing the characters into it. And so I do that a lot in Clockworks now.
Can you pull up an example of where you did that in Clockworks?
Yeah, sure. Somewhere. Let me see what page that is. 190 is a good example. As I'm, slowly flipping through Photoshop. All right. So this is, that's not the page I want.
Is that how you start off with rough sketches like that?
Yeah.
Cool.
I do all of the line art by hand, but I'll usually do like a rough doodle in Photoshop just to get a layout of the page.
Oh, right. Where you're going to frame things and
yeah.
And
then I'll go and draw it, because I'm much better at drawing with a pen than I am with a tablet. So, So yes, here is big crazy.
That was a recent one.
Yeah, this is just a few pages ago.
Mm-hmm.
So our heroes have arrived. They've left Florenzi City. They arrived in Paravo, which is another city and country nearby. And I wanted to do a big establishing shot, so that you really got a sense of the place.
Yeah, and you do a really good job of layering the the forced perspective, with the larger foreground, tinier background and whatnot. That's really good.
And let's see, we can even zoom in there.
Nice.
This is 100%. This is the scale that I actually make the comic at.
Wow.
It's kind of ridiculous. But yeah. And this was all from the archives on Flickr. Has the Commons, which is just this huge collection of Creative Commons and public domain photos that you can search for that people have uploaded. So I would find, like, these buildings are from one photo, and these ships are from an entirely different photo, and these buildings are from something, and all of that. So there were maybe a dozen different photos that went into that.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And they were all black and white, so then I kind of, tinted them to be in color and build stuff. I guess I can turn off the words so you can see that whole section that's covered up.
How long does it take you to put one of these together?
The big collages? Depends. Maybe a couple of days.
Like straight?
Well, no, yeah, I would sleep and
24 hours, yeah.
Yeah, 48. This was maybe 10 to 12 hours, which is more than a usual Clockworks page, but it was also the first page of a new chapter and the first page of a new setting, so I really wanted to,
Yeah, you want to drive
go all out.
Yeah.
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 I want to say, here we are. This is, people keep it in mind. The more standard sort of. I almost compare a lot of the Clockworks art to a side-scrolling video game.
Oh.
Like when our heroes are walking around town. I kind of think of it that way when I'm, imagining it in my head. It's like a 2D platformer.
Yeah. I remember there's a couple of chase scenes early on where it looked exactly like that. Like they were like jumping rooftops and stuff, and yeah. Yes,
exactly. I'm going to have to do some of those again soon. Slowly loading. I've got so many things open right now. Sorry, Photoshop. I have like 5 pages of stuff open. Photoshop is cranky at me. Because these files are all, ridiculously large.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so here we go.
Right, so at the top there.
So this is a normal sort of street scene in Clockworks, although
standard marching
it's a bit more colorful now that we've left. Yeah. Now that we've
I think your audio
left sunlight, and yeah.
Cool. That's really cool, man.
So yeah, so I wanted that big establishing shot to keep in mind, so once you saw this, you could place them in that picture.
Right.
But yes, that is a thing I learned from Streets of Bedlam and brought back to the comic.
Have you played Streets of Bedlam, by the way?
I have, not a ton, but I've gotten to run it a couple of times.
Cool.
I really enjoyed it.
Very cool. Anything from the game that you've brought to your Clockworks? So Clockworks is based on the campaign, as you said previously. Yes. Is there anything that you brought game-wise from Streets of Bedlam into Clockworks?
I don't know. Well, because the Clockworks home game I ran before I got to run Streets of Bedlam.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that ended before Streets of Bedlam came about?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so. Or it was wrapping up right around the same time. I'm trying to, remember dates and years, but yes, more or less.
Right. What about in the development of the setting and like setting rules or anything like that? Is there anything you're looking at that it's like, oh, maybe this could work? Or
yeah, not so much. Well, some of the edges and stuff. I'm gonna have a note that's like you can steal these. The one thing I've been really impressed by lately was the new Superpowers companion. Mm-hmm. Is a really good fit for the Clockworks setting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because one of the problems actually, so in the original Clockworks home game, that's what I refer to the campaign that the comic is based on, is the Clockworks home game. The Weird Science, instead of using the normal Savage Worlds rules, we used the Necessary Evil Supers rules, which ended up being completely overpowered to everyone else. So what happened in the original campaign was that because of the way we were using the different rules mashed together, Toby, who was the weird scientist, ended up being just infinitely more powerful than every other character. But the new Superpowers companion does a really good job of putting limits on that, and I think it would actually work really well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I would love to hear about that, how that works out.
I'll probably put it as an optional rule in the quick start.
Right.
Either, use the book as rule, or if you've got the superpower, do this.
Nice.
Yeah.
So a little GM or author advice.
Yeah.
Advice. That's pretty cool. Cool. So let's see what else we got. So yeah, I think I asked most of these already. Yeah. So what can you tell us about the development of the setting itself? How far along are you in that, and as an RPG product.
Ah, I want to say the manuscript, which is now kind of on the back burner as I move forward with the quick start at the back of the comic, is about halfway written. And a lot of it's been funny because I would add stuff, and then we would play test it, and I would take it out. Because I was like, oh, I'm cool. I'm gonna add some extra rules for this, and I was like, oh, we don't need extra rules for this. Like there was a whole system where each character had a humor, like you were vitreous or sanguine or whatever, which fit very much in the sort of setting of it. But it was just unnecessarily fiddly and mechanically complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd spend a lot of time, writing stuff and researching stuff, and then throw it all away.
Oh man!
But but that's how you know that you don't need it.
Right. Right.
But yeah, the main setting book is kind of sitting on the back burner now as I worry about the other stuff for a while.
Right.
But it's about halfway written.
And you have that available as a public Google Doc.
Yeah. So anybody who wants to see, each chapter is their own Google Doc. They're in the there's a link to it on the comic site.
Yeah, that's under the RPGs or RPG heading or menu item on the site.
Yes. So you can also anybody can go and read them. They can also leave comments and suggestions and so on and so forth. Keep in mind that I'm not currently focused on that. So.
Right. Yeah.
You're like, this section's half empty. I'm like, well, yes, it's going to stay that way for a little bit.
And just to clarify, having it publicly available does not necessarily mean that people can take it and republish it or anything to that effect. It's strictly for soliciting feedback.
They can actually, Clockworks itself, the Savage rules aren't, but Clockworks itself is actually available via a Creative Commons license.
Oh, okay. So people can produce.
You can do all sorts of stuff.
That's fantastic.
Clockworks, the comic, and the eventual Savage World setting is a Creative Commons 4.0. See if I remember the exact details of it. You have to give me credit. You can remix it. You can make any changes. You have to keep the same license, and you can't sell it. A non-commercial BY, whatever. It's all written on the site. But basically, yes, you are free to take any of the Clockworks stuff, be it the comic, be it the role-playing game setting, anything that I've written, and make your own variations or translations or riffs or remixes or goofy parodies or anything you want, so long as you give me credit and you don't sell it. It's basically the short of it.
So if they want to extend the setting to add new locations, or if they want to create new edges or hindrances, or let's say even like an archetype kind of a thing, or powers even, that it's the Creative Commons license is going to allow them to do that?
Sort of. The Savage Worlds rules, and they have a really nice fan license. The Savage Worlds rules aren't covered under the Creative Commons. That's still
right.
Copyright by Pinnacle.
That's right. Yeah.
So you can't put out
a fan license.
Yeah, they have a great fan license that you can do all sorts of really cool stuff with. But you could like make up adventures or new nations or all sorts of things. Really, you could make your own comic set in the Clockworks world.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, just run with it. And if you want to sell it, talk to me and we'll work out something. But
right.
Yeah, if you just want to make it and have fun with it, yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Very cool. Very cool.
I'm a big proponent of Creative Commons, so.
Yeah, there's been some good things that have come out of Creative Commons.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So where do you plan to take the story in Clockworks?
All over
is that
the
like
place.
spoiler alerts?
I mean, it's spoiler alert, but I can give you a vague, the non-spoilery version. So it's a big, epic story. It's very much a role-playing game sort of campaign story. And part of the reason I'm finally compiling the book one ebook is that we've now finally gotten to the point in the story where I have revealed who our main villain is. I've revealed what they want. After keeping this a mystery for 100 and something pages, 180 something pages, I think. And so now, our heroes are now traveling the world. Their heroes have left Florencia. They've left the Red Republic. And, the rest of the story is now going to be them, traveling the world and getting in misadventures and also trying to track down Brigitte. Spoiler if you're not that far in the comic, sorry. And track down Brigitte and stop her from doing whatever it is she's trying to do and figure out, kind of why she wants this mystical artifact and so on and so forth. But yeah, so I mean, it's very much a big role-playing game, traveling the world sort of epic adventure. And we've only just now left the city. Um, so the next couple of chapters, they're in Paravo, which is this new country where their new friend Julius, these guys. It's where all these people, if you look over on my screen,
Yeah.
it's this guy and his family. They live in Paravo, and they're rich, as you can tell, because they have fancy hair and gold things everywhere.
That's right. That's how you know people are rich.
Yeah. If your house is covered in gold and you've got a really big dumb hair, but also if you have a robot butler.
I was going to say the robot butler is usually the dead giveaway.
But yeah, so they're going to be hanging out with these guys for a little bit and then hitting the road, hitting the seas and skies and so on. But yes, it is a huge, epic travel adventure.
Nice. So I just realized we've been talking about Clockworks, but we never really covered what Clockworks is in terms of the setting itself. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Clockworks is I call it a whatever punk epic these days because it's sort of steampunk. It's sort of right on the verge between steampunk and diesel punk and whatever. But it's it's a steampunk fantasy setting, kind of dystopian. It's really at this point kind of everything that I find personally very interesting finds a place into the Clockworks world. So there's a lot of dystopian stuff, a lot of just anything I feel like exploring kind of makes its way in there. But it's also a world of like high adventure and comics and excitement and fun.
Right. So like the main characters themselves are, for example, they're constables, but they're not constables they're official, but they're it's sort of like you can become licensed to be.
They're rent-a-cops, basically.
Right.
So in the Great Republic, the National Police is, and see, this is where I've done so much developing on the setting. The National Police run the entire police. There's not like your local state and city police. It's just they're all a branch of the military, essentially. But some of the neighborhoods are rougher, and the cops don't want to go there. So you can buy a license to have your own private constables. And as the story begins, our heroes are the private constables for the Bronze Garden neighborhood on the 5th level of Florencia City. Florencia City has 11 levels. The 5th level is about the last not good one before you move up to the nicer ones.
Nice.
Let's see. I've got somewhere in here. I've got page. Was it 190? That's the Paravo. I should remember what page has Florencia City on it. It's one of these around here. There we go.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So let's see. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Our heroes come from right down here.
Nice.
And yeah, so for 2 and 1 in Florencia City are actually entirely underground. They've just built up the whole city around them by this point that they are just basically underground slums. Whereas 11 is like this majestic city of the future.
Right. Right.
Which, yeah.
So talk a little bit about the races in Clockworks, and this is sort of where the fantasy element kind of comes in, right?
Right. So there's just the two, really. There's humans and changelings. And changelings have gone through a couple different names over the years, in part because when I first started Clockworks, Changeling the Lost had just come out, which was White Wolf's remake of the old Changeling the Dreaming game. And I didn't want to call them changelings because there was a new game called Changeling. But eventually I decided that that's what they are. And, just stick with it. But yeah, so humans, changelings. Changelings are humans who were born like normal people. And when they were little kids, disappeared and were either swapped with or mutated into elves, trolls, goblins, and the like. Basically any sort of fantasy, fae creature you can think of falls under that umbrella. And changelings, along with magic, first appeared about 50 years ago in the setting. Mm-hmm. So there's no changelings older than 49 or something like that.
And I'm sure there's a reason for that.
Yes. And that's one of the big setting mysteries and so on and so forth.
Yeah. We'll keep that as a reveal for later, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So the two characters that are changelings in the comic, tell us about them.
Toby, who is the orange guy up there, looking sad, is a giant troll. Ophelia is a blue elf lady. And they have very different. One of the things I like about Clockworks is the changelings kind of serve a place almost like mutants in like the Marvel X-Men comics. So they have very different family backgrounds. Ophelia, her parents were kind of freaked out when their lovely baby daughter was turned into a blue elf and then started doing creepy water magic. So they took her lower in the city and dropped her off in an orphanage when she was maybe 4 or 5. Where Toby's parents were like, well, this horrible little orange troll baby is our baby, and we love him. And so they raised him, and were very fiercely protective and loyal. And so you kind of get to explore those different family dynamics, which is one of the things I really like about the setting.
And didn't Toby's parents actually make an appearance in the comic?
They did, yeah. Way
cool.
back around page 50 or so.
Yeah.
Toby's grandpa showed up, and then Toby's mom and dad joined the comic briefly.
That's right. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And they're fun. He's an eccentric inventor, and his mom's kind of a nerdy librarian type.
I loved when you put that big ass suit on. That was pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, the giant. I had been waiting. There are a couple of pages that I've had in my head since the comic began, and that was one of them that I just knew was going to be exciting. That for anybody who doesn't know, around page 110 or so, Toby builds this giant steampunk Iron Man mecha suit. We don't really have a good name for it. The running joke is Mecha Toby, but that doesn't really fit in the setting. That's just, what I and the players called him. Awesome. And that happened in the original game. Toby began the game and didn't have any dots in weird science yet, or any points in weird science yet, and then picked up the edge and built himself a power armor about the time the characters hit seasoned, I think it was. Or something like that.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, I knew there was this great reveal where all of a sudden, he's got this power armor on, and then he wants to go off and fight the bad guys. And there's been a couple pages since then where Thornton shoots out Lukov's other eye. I was really excited to wait and show that. And then just in a slightly odder one, where they find Julius naked with the bomb, which happened just a couple months ago, I think. Yeah, and I've just been waiting for that one for a long time because it just amused me.
Yeah, the bomb one was hilarious. They were just like,
they're like, because they think he's the bad guy, and they run in there like, and that happened. That was scene for scene from the original game.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they had, and Toby. That was one of those little bits that I've just kept from the original game. Was Toby's player had guessed that Brigitte was the bad guy, and everybody else was like, no, it's Julius. Julius is really the bad guy. And he's like, well, what? And they just shot him down. And then they find Julius, strapped to a chair with a bomb, and Toby, yells, "I knew it!"
Yeah, told you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So yeah, we talked about.
I guess I could give the.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I guess I could give the history or development of how Clockworks came to be and stuff, if you want, because we kind of touched on that a bit.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, if you want to expand on that, feel free.
Yeah. So Clockworks was actually the third campaign I've ever played or run in this world. And I talked about how but originally I'd had this idea for sort of a fantasy game about like a technological world where gods and magic come back, and there's that conflict. And I didn't know of a system that I wanted to play into it because I'd mostly up to that point, this was all 10 years ago or so, I've been running like Vampire and World of Darkness games. Like that's basically all I ran, GM'd in the 90s. And my friend Luke, who was on Fear the Boot and later the podcast and is now just a doctor, only a doctor.
Right. Yeah.
Was hey, I got this new game, Savage Worlds. I'm gonna run a game, and you can play it. And I played in his game, which was called Ruins, which was set in this sort of post-apocalyptic fantasy primitive world where we're just now emerging after this terrible magical apocalypse and rebuilding civilization. And I had a lot of fun with it. And I asked him, hey, can I use your setting here? Because we were actually from the village of Florencia. And I was like, hey, I've got this idea for this kind of steampunk fantasy game I want to do. Can I use your setting and just set it, 2,000 years later? And he said yes. And so I got to steal a lot of his place names and, some of the old religion and stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so then I ran into this game called New Dawn, which was set 50 years before Clockworks. And, I'd not run Clockworks yet, but and that was sort of American Gods meets Final Fantasy VI was my basic idea. Mm-hmm. you've got technology and you've got weird old magic and religion coming back and people turning into elves and stuff like that. And this big war broke out across the whole country. If you look way back, about the time when Toby's grandpa showed up in the comic, when he tells his story, there's the flashback to that other group of player characters, which I can link somewhere, but I don't want to look up the exact page. Those were the player characters in New Dawn.
Okay.
That was our previous band of heroes. And actually,
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
We're actually going to see one of them again eventually.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. The general that they're going to see in the Free Islands once they finally get there. If they finally get there.
Well, we got 15 years, right?
Right. So I ran this game called New Dawn, and it was a lot of fun. And it kind of sat on the back burner. And a few years later, I had an idea for a campaign. I was like, hey guys, you want to do a sequel to New Dawn set 50 years later, and in Florencia City, because I got the loudest chair ever. Sorry. In New Dawn, the Great Republic were the villains. They were the ones running around invading all the other countries in sort of the evil empire kind of way. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool to do a game where we set in that country and explore it a bit more? And I had this idea for a story, and it's stuck around. And so that's how the game came around. And then the comic came around, like I said, and it's been here ever since. And then people wanted to play it, so I've been sort of trying to work out making the setting available to them.
So what sold you on Savage Worlds?
It was fun. It was literally, the tagline was completely accurate. The first time I played it, I really enjoyed it, and it was, fast, furious, and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it completely lived up to what it set out to do, at least for me.
It just hit all the right spots for you.
Yeah. I got to make a character I wanted to, and he was fun to play. So that
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt with it, or felt about it too. For me, it was right at the turning point where my wife was pregnant. We were about to have our first kid, and we had just moved as well to a different state, and I was like, I could try to get some of my friends, my new friends, and actually my cousin as well, into D&D, but it was just way too much to try to get them into it, and I just didn't have the time and energy to run a D&D campaign. And someone introduced me to Savage Worlds, and I was just like, oh my god, this is
fast and easy.
Yeah, it's just everything I needed and I just wanted out of an RPG. And I kind of call it the good enough system. It's like, that's good enough. I'm good with that. I can run that and I can play it and I'm happy.
Yep. There are other games I like more for specific things, but it's a great fallback system for basically everything.
Yeah. It just kind of covers it well enough. Whatever it is you're trying to do. It's not perfect, but it's well enough. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what about other Clockworks products or spinoffs? Are you thinking of doing anything else with it?
Right now, my main focus is the comic,
mm-hmm.
And just keeping that going. Obviously, the collection and the quick start. They're actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. There theoretically may be a board game in the next year or so.
Theoretically,
theoretically, it's nothing's been signed, nothing's been set in stone. But
it could just as easily be a card game or whatever else. So we'll just say theoretically. Yeah.
There could possibly be a board game that my friends might be making. Which would be amazing, and I will be helping with the art and so on and so forth.
Pretty cool.
But that's a few meetings away. But I would love to see more other stuff. I just kind of need to either make it or make enough of a baseline for other people to build off of it.
Speaking of artwork, by the way, and for games, when you do finally get the Savage Worlds RPG setting done, the adventure deck, a nice adventure deck with some good artwork would be pretty awesome.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, it could be a nice accessory to have.
That's not the one nice thing about the eventual Savage World setting is I've got right now 200 pages of old artwork.
That's right. Yeah, you're covered, man.
Anytime I need to fill in some stuff, I have plenty of options. There's actually going to be a lot of new artwork that I want to put into it, but
Cool. Very cool. Yeah. You don't want it to just all be recycled.
But
cool.
Anytime I need spot fillers, I was like, I've got that covered.
So we're kind of coming to the end of the hour here. I want to ask you a couple more questions.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily related to Clockworks, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
So you're also a DJ.
Yes.
That's so. Tell me about that. Like, how did you get into that as well?
Oh, I started back in college, just playing techno music at people's, dorm room parties. And then just kept doing it. I've actually started kind of taking it easy on DJing because I don't listen to a lot of new music anymore. Like mostly I'm just listening to soundtracks and stuff these days.
Yeah, same here.
But yeah. Then I kind of went and did a bunch of goth nights for a bunch of years, and then did a bunch of like electro stuff and like indie rock stuff. And what I've mostly been DJing the last 5 years or so have been burlesque shows and like the parties associated afterwards, and that's just a ton of fun.
You actually just asked a gaming geekery question related to.
I did, yes.
The show, yeah, yeah.
I just ran a giant burlesque festival, and I picked up various bruises and cuts and scrapes and fatigue over the weekend. I was like, okay, so in your game system of choice, how much damage have I taken over this weekend? And I put it on Google Plus, and I also put it on RPGNet as a thread.
Yeah. And
the results were really fun because depending on what game people are running, I either am not at all impaired. I've got a pretty hefty penalty, maybe a -1 or -2 in Savage Worlds, or I'm dead. If I'm an old, like first edition AD&D character, I'm dead right now.
That's awesome. That's right. One hit point.
Yeah. I have taken at least 5 hit points of damage, and I'm out.
That's right. That's right. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. A cat could kill you.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
It's true.
Yeah. So along those lines, have you ever, for your campaign, did you ever produce a playlist or anything to that effect, or done a set for your gaming?
I don't DJ, but I do playlists because I can't do a DJ set because I'm busy running the game. But
no, I didn't know if you like recorded one in advance and then played it.
No,
back
but I am a addict for. Here, I'll open this up. iTunes playlists. And normal campaigns, I might have like 4 or 5 different playlists.
Yeah.
Like there might be the regular one and an action playlist and so on. For the actual Clockworks campaign, I went completely overboard and insane.
Wow, you are not kidding.
Look over here. Yeah, there are, I want to say like 30-some playlists. And there's the general Clockworks. We had the theme song that played at the start of every session, which is Rob Dugan's Will You Follow Me, which eventually got to the point. My friend who played Thornton in the show played that at his wedding.
Oh, wow.
Like just during the dinner, because a bunch of us were there. But yeah, there's action, danger, action, excitement, action, final boss, and then like towns for each of the different countries, because one of the different countries have their own vibe. Creepy dungeons, military, party, romance, triumph, sadness, and then like the ending. I went completely overboard.
I don't have as an extensive of a set of a collection of playlists, but for my Eberron game, I actually had a collection of playlists for things like aftermath, adventure, action, exploration, horror, those kinds of things. Yeah.
This is a more normal one. Like I ran a Dungeon World game last summer.
Nice.
And this was, like about 8 or 10 playlists, and that was, less ridiculous.
And you're right, it's addictive, man. It's so addictive. I've got I have a Google Play Music All Access account.
Oh, cool.
And I am constantly just like scouring it for soundtracks and, just whatever is out there. There's even some stuff that you can get that's like ambient stuff, like just like background noise, like jungle effects, like if you're in a, like a tropical jungle kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll use that sometimes, So if they're like in Zendrick or something like that in Eberron, I'll throw that on there. So you got like parrots and, birds making calls in the background and, rain coming down. It's
awesome.
Yeah.
I would like to mess with like Spotify or Google Play or something like that to, put a version of these people can listen to.
Yeah.
I think that would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, if anybody knows, by the way, how to do it in iTunes, that'd be cool. Feel free to put a comment.
Let us know.
Yeah, comment on this and let us know. So cool. So what games are you playing now, man? I'm
actually getting ready to start up a Dungeon World game.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yes.
How do you like Dungeon World?
I love it. I love it so much. It really, for what I want right now, kind of hits my perfect sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually tangentially related to the Clockworks. Basically, every campaign I've run since Clockworks has been set in some version of the Clockworks world. Because this one I'm like, well, I might as well. If I'm going to put the effort into making a game setting,
Oh yeah,
I might as well be able to feed it back, you know.
yeah. It's an investment.
Yeah. So the Dungeon World game is set in Northolm, which is the country north of the Great Republic, which I don't know might show up in the comic. Will definitely be in the RPG. So the Dungeon World game is actually the like mythic, legendary Northolm. So I don't have to worry about it. It's not historically accurate. Imagine I'm doing air quotes right now
Yeah.
to the fictional setting of Clockworks, but it's sort of a variant. It's a more over the top, fantastic version. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a bunch of Vikings and crazy barbarians and clerics and all sorts of cool stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah, but we had our character creation, and we're getting ready to do the first one in a couple weeks.
Nice. And is that something you think you can bring back into the comic itself at some point, or
probably? Yeah. At least references or like side stories or legends or that sort of thing.
Minor characters or something like that, or
yeah. Because this will be all set thousands of years before the comic, but
okay. Okay, interesting.
But it could be very well like in the legends of that great hero who killed the frost giant, so and so.
Right.
Somebody might bring up a story of that. Yeah, or an artifact or something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. That's really
thanks.
cool. Yeah, this is amazing. Like the work you've done with Clockworks and making it a sort of living, breathing thing that's just continuing to evolve is incredible.
That's been one of the most fun parts for it for me, definitely.
Yeah. And I'm sure even if once you do get the RPG setting out, that'll probably just be your starting point, right? I mean, I can imagine.
Oh yeah, I'd love to do more, source books and all of that sort of thing.
Right, like region guides and whatever it might be. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I could totally see that. That would be
region guides and adventures. What I want to do with the adventures, when I ever get there, is that each one will have big stuff that could alter the campaign world in a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
So that everybody's Clockworks campaign will be yours.
Right.
So that if you run this campaign and you blow up Florencia City, not that I'm saying that's what's going to happen, but as an example, if Godzilla attacks Florencia City, your campaign is obviously very different now than the official one.
Right.
And I really want everybody to be able to customize their own one in each unique ways.
So there's not like a singular meta plot that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually one of the things I kind of like about Eberron is that they don't advance the timeline.
Right.
And specifically because they're also trying to make it such that everybody's Eberron is different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't touch it, which is cool. So I think that'd be pretty awesome to see that in Clockworks, where you could have different outcomes, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what outcome you have; it's yours.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Thank you.
Cool, man. All right. So yeah, we're kind of nearing the end of the hour here. Is there anything else that you want to throw out there about Clockworks, or anything else that you're working on, or just anything interesting about yourself?
If people really like Clockworks, they can give me money at Patreon.com. I think it's /SAGASTON. We'll put a link up on the side, and there's a link on the Clockworks page. And that has actually really changed how I can approach making the comic. It's been a great thing for the kind of health of updates of the comic itself, is the fact that I get paid for them now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally forgot you were doing the Patreon thing.
Yeah. I should have mentioned it much sooner. Yeah. But no, it's great. But yeah, one of because the Patreon's been running for about a year now, and it's really been this fantastic change where before, if I was like, I have a bunch of bills I need to make sure I get paid this month, I have to make sure I get a bunch of extra work done, I'm probably gonna have to put the comic on hold for a while. Whereas now it's like, I've got a bunch of extra bills coming up, like I'm getting ready to move to a different apartment just across the neighborhood, and I was like, I need to make sure I keep making comics so that I can afford to do stuff, and on top of day job and all that. But yeah.
So what kind of extras do people get with the through the Patreon?
Mostly high-res downloads and kind of behind-the-scenes bonus artworks, or sometimes I'll make up special prints of blown-up like particular panels or stuff like that. If there's like a page that I'm drawing that I decide that I really like the line art of, I'll start building a thing around it.
Nice.
But generally, the big one is at the $5 level, it's full Photoshop files for not every page, but about one a month. And my layers in Photoshop are insane.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of effects going on in there.
Yeah. Like, I guess I could. Um, and then at $20, I will actually mail you the actual line art.
Nice.
Yeah. And there's a couple of people who, I've got 3 people who spend $20 a month at least, or some of them $20 a page at least. And yeah, I send them stuff. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
But
If
yeah.
I could afford it, I would do it.
Hey, no problem. Hey,
Yeah.
for $1 a month, you can help make Clockworks happen.
I think I'm going to do that, man. I think I'm really going to do that. Honestly, yeah, I don't know why I keep forgetting about it.
It's okay.
So,
No, I'm incredibly grateful to the people who have been throwing me money for the last year, and incredibly grateful to people who just read the comic and enjoy it. Whether or not they have money to throw at me, and just that I get to do this and that people enjoy it. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So if for those of you listening or watching, either now or later, yeah, definitely check out the Clockworks homepage. There's a Patreon link on there, if I recall correctly. And throw money at Shawn, because I like Clockworks. I'm going to throw some money at it. It might actually be $1 a month.
Hey,
But yeah, I think it'll also mean I'm assuming this implies that more money you get, the easier it'll also be to produce not just the comic, but even the
RPG and all that sort of thing. Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
exactly. So yeah, I think it's
That's actually the next stretch goal. Is once we get to $150 a page.
Mm-hmm.
And it's currently at I think 125 or something like that. I'll be doing at least once a week role-playing games, setting posts,
Oh, nice.
either with rules or setting stuff, and all that's eventually going to make its way into the Clockworks setting book.
Right.
But it's sort of a way to incentivize. Okay, cool. Now I can post some gamer stuff.
Cool. So one thing I was going to ask you, I totally forgot to ask this earlier about the RPG, your development of it. A lot of licensees will sometimes, get feedback or solicit feedback from like Clint Black over at Pinnacle. Have you had opportunities to interact with him in that regard?
Yeah, we did actually.
Cool.
He had some feedback on the stats for changelings, and some of it I listened to, some of it I disagreed with a bit, but we made it work.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah. He was actually very helpful with that.
Cool.
I have one of my players who played Thornton in the original Clockworks game is fantastic at breaking game systems.
Yeah.
But he's a great player, and I actually really love having him, especially on something like this, because he can really build a character, and like if he wants to make somebody who's really good at something, he can find the way to just completely min-max that out.
Right.
So it's great to have somebody like that when you're making a game, because you're like, oh, hey, what's broken here? What can you break and tear apart, and do I need to mess with? And he had some great feedback from that too.
Oh, that's cool. That's really good. Yeah, that's a good resource to have.
Yeah, you want that player who can destroy your game.
Right, right. Find those gaps. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty cool.
All right, is that
Cool. Yeah, I think so. That's time for us.
All
so
right.
thank you again for doing this. This is
Hey, no problem. This has been a ton of fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely, I agree. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing where you take Clockworks. And again, for those of you who are watching this now or later, go check it out. It's ShawnShanary.com/Clockworks. I think there's a link in the description for this. If not, I'll be sure to add it in the comment later. And yeah, thanks again, Shawn. Really, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, we'll wrap up now. And thanks for everybody for listening. And thank you, Shawn. And I hope everybody has a good night.
All right.
Take care.
Bye, folks.